right. Welcome to Are You Sure You Want to Know? Disruptive conversations on faith, culture, and everything in between. My name is Alvin, and I'm the Outreach Director at the Conversation SLC, a brand new church in Salt Lake City, coming in hot with a different dynamic. And today we're with the lead pastor, Mike Rutledge. Good afternoon, Mike.
Hey.
Thanks for coming, and tell us a little bit about yourself. I noticed that you have more guitars than you have teeth, so maybe let's talk about that.
Is that a teeth comment or a guitar comment?
What did you tell me? They asked that the guy said, how many guitars do you need?
Yeah, one
more.
More.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, so I love music and I love creativity and just enjoying different ways of doing things that aren't what everyone already does. That's probably something we're going to get into, like even about how the church functions, trying to do church a little bit differently.
No, it's absolutely disruptive. We love it. That is the burning question of today.
Yeah.
What is the Conversation SLC, and who are we, and what makes us different, and where are we headed?
Yeah, so let me give you a little, you want some history lesson on this maybe? Yeah, so I was working at a church, and this previous church that I was at, and I was asked to make a presentation for a vision for church, and so I went away, spent some time praying, thinking about this, and came up with what hit me as the driving forces of the vision, and spent a bunch of time reading. There's a lot of research out there, and the idea was to have a safe space where people could ask questions. I think church should be the safest place to ask wild questions, and I think it's probably one of the least safe places for a lot of people. And so trying to create a space that engaged conversation and approached the church, the function of a Sunday morning service a little bit differently, helping people be engaged. And some of the research that I read talked about the mass exodus, highest rate, fastest rate, highest volume of people leaving the church in the history of the church. And so that's troubling, and particularly it was focused on the next generation. And if the next generation stops going to church, the church ceases to exist. And so there is a little bit of an uptick in some of the church attendance coming back, but over the longer period of time, it's going down into the right, not up into the right. And so, but just a lot of what people were checking out on wasn't checking out on Jesus. They were checking out on their experiences at church and the way churches function. They were looking for something new. And so we're trying to lean into that. I think that so many people want to be engaged. This is what the research says.
They don't want to be invisible.
They don't want to be talked at. They want to be part of the conversation.
Got it.
Don't talk your role and my role. Let me ask questions. And so we're trying to create a space where that happens. And I think if we process through our own faith, it's going to mean more to us than someone telling me what my faith should be and just trying to do my best version of mimicking that.
Help me work through my questions as opposed to giving me a rote answer, right?
Yeah, and ultimately you want that anyway. You want to figure, when life is all done, you're going to be on the hook for whatever you've decided to believe, and just following someone else doesn't really do you any favors. And so I think we really want that anyway. So, and just helping people sort through that.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an amazing method. Just recently we had to go to, not really had to, but you went on vacation and we had to go to, that traditional church setting.
Yeah.
And it was being part of this church since the beginning and feeling this new dynamic. I guess I was spoiled because that was, oh my goodness. Nothing wrong with it, but now that I've experienced, this open, inviting, top down, instead of a top down church hierarchy, it's almost flat where everybody can talk to everybody. It's such a freeing feeling. And so that's how that goes to the next question is how did the vision...
Well, hold on, but before you even ask this question, the one thing I would say is there are a lot of churches that do things differently. There are really traditional churches, really progressive. Some people would refer to seeker sensitivity or whatever. And I think there are a lot
Say
of...
that last thing again?
Seeker sensitivity.
Okay.
Trying to find people who are exploring, but and so that typically means high technology and some of that. And I have no problem with any of that. I think it's all great. That's just not what I felt like I was supposed to do. I think there's all kinds of bags of chips you can buy, and some of them I like, some of them I don't. And so whatever someone's supposed to do, they should do. But for us, I just felt like I had a fairly clear sense on what I thought would be effective and work. And then we're still going on. We'll see. We're in the middle of our story, not at the end. So, or beginning of our story.
I was going to say, probably fairly at the beginning. So how did the vision for the Conversation SLC begin? Like, what was, did you have like specific experiences, or you believed that, hey, we need a radical new approach?
Well, I'm one of those guys who grew up in church, going to church, and just I grew up in that environment, and I actually enjoyed it. But my faith became my own probably in my 20s. It really wasn't until then that I knew exactly what I believed in certain. I'll never fully know until the day I die what I believe completely. Probably no one will. But so I grew up, and as I was involved at church, and I was learning, and then I was working at a church for the last 20 years, teaching and doing arts and some of the other things. And I was asked to present a vision for church. I hadn't really thought about that, and so I spent some time thinking about that and praying about that, went away and spent some time, came back and presented this. And over time, that I read a bunch of books too, a lot of research stuff that talked about trends in the church and some things that probably needed to be addressed. And so as I filtered through all of those different things, I also had an experience going to a tremendous church in Columbus, Ohio. And this church had really unique practices. And I'm like, I think if more churches were kind of edgy like this, maybe there's a space where people could process differently. And so,
give me a couple of examples.
Yeah, so I went to. They had a conference that went on, and So after each of the plenary talks, the person that gave the talk, and I'm talking 1,000 people, 1,500 people maybe in this group of people listening to the talk, and they would get done with the talk, and after that, they opened it up. During the talk, they gave you a number. You could text in questions, or sometimes they'd pass a mic, and you could just ask questions. And whoever was presenting would answer the questions in real time. And these were not like the light and fluffy question. These were heavy hitting. There was some hard stuff about really valid important, immediate cultural stuff. And they answered them. And I'm like, man, that's really refreshing. They're actually addressing, because a lot of times we think we know what someone's asking, but until someone asks that question, we're not sure. And so they would get real questions and they would address them. And I'm like, that's really, really cool. And by the way, this church is really growing, tons of young people, just a really vibrant place where people are coming alive in Christ. I'm like,
Do you believe it's because those kids feel that they're being seen and actually heard, as opposed to just giving rote responses from decades and decades and decades of tradition?
But not just kids too. I think all of us want to be included in the conversation. I think that's a big piece of it, is being not talked at, but talked with, right? You've had those experiences where someone's talking at you versus where someone is actually conversing with you.
I think most of our conversations is like that.
I'm not going to ask which one you mean, but I'm going to assume in my own mind. But yeah, but being able to be engaged, and I think the more we understand each other, the broader our worldview gets, and the more information we have to sort through, and the more informed our decisions can become, and it's just a richer way to live. And that's what we want. You don't, like, even in our relationships, you don't want to have a relationship with someone who just talks at you the whole time. Mm-hmm. You want to be able to converse. And so why should that be any different in our relationship with Jesus?
So yeah, that goes on to the next question. On the website, it talks about conversations. Mm-hmm. So this is where I would like you to kind of, like, in small words, so simple people like me can understand. What does the conversation mean in practice?
Well, we have a term that we use, and this is stolen from Andy Stanley, who's a great speaker. He says we like to have circles, not rows, and that's just the idea of talking with each other, not talking at or behind each other's back. It's just a really great concept. And another phrase we have, taken from Ted Lasso, the theologian. he says, be curious, not judgmental. And so I think that so often we think the goal of our spiritual pursuit is to get to a point where we're confident in everything we know. And I don't actually think that's a great methodology. I think we should continue to be curious about what we might have wrong still, and continue to pursue God and continue to understand Him on a deeper level. And again, this happens if you're just in a room by yourself, you're going to grow as much as you can grow. If you're in a room with other people, you're going to grow significantly more if you listen. And so we're designing the Sunday experience. You get together, we talk, we have a lesson. We still do all the standard practices. We pray, we do worship music and, all that kind of stuff. We have programs for the kids. But during the time of the teaching, or we call it a conversation, we'll have some breakout times, and we'll just have people interjecting. People interrupt. They'll raise a question in the middle of the service, and sometimes that'll go in a whole new direction.
Oh, yeah.
Or sometimes we typically have breakout times where you get into smaller groups where you can be a little more I was just sharing today, even at church, the idea that I know I'm asking people to be kind of trusting of others and take a chance and share something about yourself, but that's where community happens. And so, and once community grows, you have greater trust, and you're willing to share more, you're willing to learn more. And so I just think it all centers around this idea that we need to know more. We need to be engaging with each other and pursuing this together. And so I'm trying to create that space. And I probably already said this, but I think church should be the safest place to ask hard questions, and it's probably one of the least safe places for many people. And so I'm trying to fight against that.
Yeah.
So
any question is welcome. No questions off the table, right?
Yeah, I would, with one exception. I mean, there are some questions that are not appropriately addressed in the public. There would be a handful of things you'd want to say, hey, let's go get coffee, which is great too, because then I'll get to know you.
Right.
There's some really big questions that need some private conversation, not mass group that can be chaotic. But I think generally speaking, the questions that you're going to hear in a church, somebody coming to a church, they have questions about some specific things based around their faith and their spirituality.
Sure.
And so,
or community, what community they belong in.
Yeah. And so I think that just being able to address those topics in real time, and if someone's thinking it, there's a good chance other people are thinking that as well. So why not talk about it then?
Sure.
So
yeah, it kind of bridges that cultural divide too.
Yeah,
it really does. And that's what we our ultimate goal is to become one community, one body of Christ, and not think of other people as other people, but my people, my family, my culture, my community.
Yep.
So we talked about the worship and the community aspect of it. How do we approach discipleship? Do we have a unique approach?
Well, so sometimes I think that the church thinks about discipleship in a really interesting way, and that's maybe something worth considering, a different approach. And oftentimes we think that discipleship is gaining knowledge, right? I read these books, and these books tell me these things. I think discipleship is centered around what we call connected community. We know each other, and you have pockets of community. There's a mass community, there's a smaller community, even like Jesus with his disciples, the 12, the 2, the 1, or the 3 and the 1. Like, as you get into smaller groups, you can be a little more honest. And I think discipleship is all about just helping people, and people, like, I view it less as I'm your mentor, you're my mentee. Like, let's just be together and let's process life together. And I think your spirituality should not be separated from the rest of your life. It should be integrated with everything you do. And so as you're spending time together, you're sharing, you're eating together, you're hanging out, you're doing activities together, you're reading the word, you're talking about spiritual stuff, all of that, that's all that's just discipleship to me. And the goal would be to make disciples that continue to do that, right? And so, but that, again, that happens in community, in my opinion. That's why we're so big on a connected community. And a connected community is a community that knows about each other. I trust you. I've taken, you know things about me that, so.
Well, see, even knowing your theological background, you have an education in this arena. You've been in church and be leading a church for, 2 decades. And you're still learning, right? Each and every day somebody teaches you something different, and I see that with the conversation as well. Standing on the God's word is static is contrary to what the Bible says. The Bible is a living, breathing, dynamic thing. It fills each and every one of us each day, and seeing everyone grow and bloom in this church because of their ability to contribute, just goes a long way. And that's how I see the conversation's response to the current challenges and disillusionment of, current church traditions. So what does it mean for your not your, but our church to be Christ-centered? And how does this core belief inform everything else that you do?
Yeah, well, let me address one thing you said and then I'll come back around to this. The first thing is I think like some of the greatest learning for me is when I'm trying to teach a lesson or when I'm trying to prepare for something, a topic we're talking about, a scripture, or whatever it is. And I feel like the first thing that needs to happen is I got to make sure this is true of me. If it's not true of me, then I shouldn't be talking about it, right? And so that's the first thing. And so I tend to learn so much more. And what I'll do is I'll have this new thought and I'll bounce it off my wife, or I'll call some friends, or we'll talk about stuff. And I just feel like I learned. But so that's the first thing. I just want to address about what you said. And your second question was what now?
What does it mean to be Christ-centered?
Yeah, Christ-centered. Okay, so the thing, we use the term, we have a biblical worldview, okay? And let me see the good way to, I think many of us approach our spirituality as though, the Jerry Maguire famous quote, "You complete me," right? Like God completes us. And God I don't think he wants to complete us. I think he wants to consume all of us or have us fully surrendered to him. And that my life orbits around Christ, not Christ orbits around my life. Those are they seem not that different. They're completely different. And we have this idea of a biblical worldview because people everywhere, every decision you make, you're basing that on a thought that you've had or a belief system that you're embracing. And so a biblical worldview says we make decisions based on how we interpret Scripture. Now, so many people think truth lives within.
This is a meaty topic.
This is probably a whole other episode.
Yeah,
here.
Absolutely.
But I think that so many people make decisions based on their feelings. The problem is your feelings change by the day, by the hour, by the minute, even sometimes. And so, truth needs to be out external. So, if there needs to be an ultimate authority, and so Christ-centered means we're going to the biblical worldview. Christ is going to be the center of what we focus our lives on, how we make decisions. Everything we do comes back to that.
Yeah, that's amazing. You would think that would be in a traditional church model, but me not having my own individual voice contribute to not necessarily how the doctrine is perceived, but how the entire culture of that community is.
Well, think about this: a big change that took place. I don't know when this was, but pre-80s, 1980s, is a term that started being used was you can have your personal relationship with Jesus. And that's a true statement. It's good. But I think over time it shifted a little bit from me personally interacting with God to me having my own version of what my spirituality is. Right. And that's kind of a different thing too. And so
I hear that all the time. People tell me that all the time. I believe in God. I just don't go to church, man. I read my Bible on my own and I worship God because I'm supposed to have a personal relationship with God. Yeah. Absolutely you do. But I don't know if you're reading that
not
right.
completely separate from everything, right? So, so that would be my answer for that, yeah.
Our values mention courageous conversations. I know that we asked one today. You talked about, take a step of faith and talk to each other, if you can, about the hard stuff. Like what is hard for you to truly step into your faith. Can you give me an example of aside from today, a difficult or challenging topic that we've addressed as a community? And what was the outcome of that?
Yeah. Well, I would say anytime you talk about community, there's two versions. There's what God's version of what community looks like, and that's found in the early chapters of Acts, actually throughout all of Acts. But there's the world's version of community, and community typically looks like high school. You got your athletes, you got your and the ultimate goal of community there is to fit in with those people who look like us. And we want to hang with the people who we agree with. And that becomes an echo chamber, I think is the term I've been hearing a lot.
Yeah.
But the reality is biblical community is very different. It's not find people like you. It's love people who are unlike you and learn to live in community with people who think very differently. I mean, I say this all the time, and I think this is really valuable. I know you're married. I'm married. if my hope of having good community with my wife was based on us always agreeing, or you always agreeing, or anyone, there's not a single individual in the world that truly agrees with 100% of what you think, what I think, and so it's a better model to go embrace love, live into the relationship in spite of difference. Be curious. You think something different of me, maybe. If I think what you think is crazy, it should be up to me to go, help me understand this, And so community becomes a place where we look very different, and that can be ethnic, it can be, geographic, it can be economic. There's so many ways we can look different, even in belief systems. But that doesn't preclude that you can't hang together and learn from each other, even outside of the Christian faith. And so I think we talk about this all the time.
It tells us neither Jew nor Gentile, bond or free.
Yeah.
So God is not respective of race, culture, community, none of that.
That's right.
He sees us all as his.
Yep.
And we treat each other the same.
And the reality is, being in community with people who aren't like, here's why this works. People who aren't like you, being in community with them is hard because they're not like me. They see things different. I feel that it's challenging at times.
We're trying to bridge that divide.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And again, as you try and truly understand the other person's point of view, is going to be your best way to bridge that gap. So we talk about that a lot.
Yeah, we do. It's so pertinent and so relevant right now too in the current political climate.
Yeah.
Just the world is standing on division. It's really encouraging division instead of trying to come up with a way to bridge our differences and come together as a people.
Yeah.
So how do we differentiate between a come as you are approach as opposed to something that challenges people to grow and change into what we think that God wants us to be?
Yeah, I mean, again, we're a church, so we have a worldview that's based on the Bible and based on our understanding who Jesus is and what he calls us to. And I think that as people, people come to church, they've got to be interested in something. And so there's a reason they come to church. And so I think capitalizing on the moment to really share. But I have this belief, we've already talked about this. It's not my job to convince you of something. It's my job to provide a space where you can process through that. And a space where you can, wherever you are on the spectrum of faith or any of the differences that we have, if we were having a conversation about something and we had a wildly different worldview, I would ask, so my solution is, well, I have this belief based on this biblical understanding. Tell me your biblical worldview. And what I find often when I have these conversations, people have not thought through their biblical worldview. They have an emotional worldview, they have a personal worldview, they have a circumstantial worldview, and it's all based on these things, but these things change.
I think it's based upon personal consumption. What are you consuming by way of, entertainment, information,
doom scrolling, video, books, like all this stuff. It's just everything. And if it's not based in a ground, something that's grounded, something, that's, got a track record of being proven true, which I believe the Bible does have, then I think you're on shaky ground. And so the term we use, radical inclusion, which we want everyone to feel welcome, but not just welcome, to be included.
Right.
So wherever you are in your journey, join the body of the church, making the church happen, being engaged in community, participating in the life of the church, not just being accepted. And
because a lot of people think, oh, I'm accepted, but I'm not really part of I'm tolerated.
Yeah.
Because, let me give you a couple of examples. We have had, since the beginning of our journey here, we've had a Muslim who served this church.
Yep.
At the end of his, he had to move away because he's going to, heal people.
Yeah.
He, at the very end, when he spoke to us, he said, this church brought me closer to God. Not one time did he say he converted.
Right.
He said, this brought me closer to God.
Yeah.
And he said, I've never experienced, because he says, I grew up, Muslim, and we are taught that they're the other side of that. you guys broke that mold. You guys changed my whole thought process. And he served our church for months and months and months before he went.
Had he not moved, he would still be here.
He would still be here. Yeah. And he's already talking about launching, the conversation in New York City. So, right. I mean, that's hope for that. Everybody pray for that. And then we had another guy who was a Wiccan. He started his journey with us as he's got tattoos all over his body. He told me, I'm not a Christian. I don't have any intention on being a Christian. And X amount of months later, he's one of our greatest evangelists.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have never seen somebody so on fire to share our message, to share our church.
Yeah, he went from being a Wiccan to being a follower of Jesus who needs everyone else to know about the life-changing gospel. Like he can't keep it down.
Right.
He's just constantly, it's a really beautiful thing to be part of.
So the radical inclusion says that it doesn't matter your lifestyle, your religion, your beliefs, your politics. None of that matters. Come in and be a part of our family. And that is one of the biggest tenets, I think, that makes us different.
I hope so. I mean, there's so many things you can build a church on. And again, churches that are doing what they feel called to do is what they should do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
This is just what we thought, or what I thought God was leading us to do. And so that's what we're doing. And
yeah, I've never one time thought during this journey, because that's another mistake that young churches do. In fact, I invited a workmate to church, and he is a Mormon. He's from Africa, and I'm a Mormon. He's like, the last time I went to a different church, all they did the whole time was sat up there and bashed the Mormon church. Yeah. So at no time am I saying that, the conversation has it right. We're the right way. Everybody else's, traditional methodology is wrong. Yeah. I'm simply saying that we're doing it different because this is what God calls us to do.
Yeah, that's
right. So like, what does active participation look like in the conversation? So as a just a standard member, not anybody in leadership or anybody doing who has a role, what does active participation look like in the conversation?
Yeah, I think being part of the body on Sundays, I so often when we attend church, we think things like, I come to church, I hope it's good for me, I hope I learn something, I hope this music's good. We have these thoughts, and they're, and they're kind of normal human thoughts. But I think that active participation would change their thinking to be, okay, I'm going to church because someone needs to hear from me. There's something that I'm bringing to, and it could be, playing in the band, or helping with children, or whatever. But I think the mindset that needs to shift is, I'm here to create the church. I'm here to be part of something.
Just explain to me that word, church. What does church mean?
Yeah, right. We confuse church versus the building,
right,
as opposed to the collection of believers. And church is it's a global people who believe in Jesus thing. And there are local churches, which are the collection of those people in certain spaces that come together to worship and engage in practices. And so to your question, I mean, I'm sure there's a global sense in which we could talk about, but I'm sensing what you're asking me is about here in this local space. Yep. So yeah, I just think having the mindset that I'm here to be someone may need something from me, so I'm going to be there today, and that kind of fights against this idea like, I'm too tired, I'm going to stay home. Mm-hmm. And I know we all get tired, but
without responsibility, there's no accountability.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. If you don't if you don't show up at work, you just tell your boss I was tired. It doesn't work that great, right? And
he's like, I'm tired too. Get to work.
Yeah, and so, but I think it could be many different places. We do events, tons of events, right? And so the events are opportunities to engage, get to know each other, have conversations
at a personal level.
Yeah, and I think that once you having a conversation with a stranger is one thing. As you get to know each other, you're afforded different grace to ask tougher questions, or get closer to learn things about the other person. And so being part of the body means, being part of the church means I'm investing in this place. I'm here to help make it happen, and in whatever capacity I'm best gifted in. So
how do you measure success beyond typical metrics like attendance or tithing?
Well, I think first of all, those are not bad metrics. I mean,
one leads to another, I think.
Well, I mean, if you don't have the money to keep your lights on in your church, that's a problem you need to address. And you want to be growing. I think what happens oftentimes, though, is those are measurements of other things being successful. Like as people's lives change, they dive deeper into the body of the church, or they begin serving more because they start to understand God calls you to be other-centered. But what happens, or can happen, I should say, is I'll be honest, I'm tempted to make this slip sometimes too. What happens is I start focusing on those as the goal, as opposed to life change as a goal, or people like someone who's coming from being wicked to being a follower of Jesus, and you see the life change happening. Those are measurements. So for me, as we think about, someone, or as we think about something that's a good measurement, it's all about, is what we're doing actually producing the kind of fruit that we hope it would produce?
What are the actual? Do we have demonstrable results?
Yeah. If Jesus is not changing lives, then what's the point? But the fact is, over and over and over again, you see life change happen as people engage with Jesus. It's just what happens. And some people reject. I get that. But the reality is, I want to grow. I want to have a church where we have seating problems and we don't have space. And those are problems. They're good problems, but they're problems. But so I just, I think I want to make sure we're focusing on the right things. And so those things are life change, baptisms and things like that. We got some baptisms coming up. We're going through this all the time. So that's what's important to me.
Right.
So
right.
It's not as quantifiable. That's one of the problems. Numbers and tithing, those are very quantifiable things.
I think seeing the difference that we make in people's lives, I think those are better metrics to chase. Because just like you said, if I'm changing your life, then you are going to want to pour in more into that. So
Absolutely.
Attendance will increase and tithing will increase. So one, I think, leads to others, because I want this to be perpetuated. I want it to continue. So by doing so, I know that this needs funds to operate.
That's right.
And if we've only got 3 people in the church, that's a Bible study. That's not really church.
Yeah.
So I think knowing, just like with our friend, our prior Wiccan, he has brought in more people into this church because he completely believes in it.
Yeah.
You could see the difference that we've made in his life. Other churches have not been able to do that. I mean, he's been in and out of.
Yeah, but those and what you're talking about is the representation of physical numeric growth of more people coming to church, and finances work.
Like I said, one leads to the others.
Yeah, and finances are not that much different. As your finance grows, it means probably your numbers are growing, or maybe people are grasping the concept of being faithful stewards of God's money as He grants you money and you give it back and to Him in percentages. The tithe, for instance, 10%. Right. These are, again, this is why those aren't really bad markers. You just can't let them be the driving thing. Ultimately, your goal isn't to make money. Your goal is to help life change. The money provides ways and means that you can accomplish that. I was
going to say that. Yeah, then when the money increases, then we have more resources to reach out to more people.
Yeah. Broaden your scope or whatever you need to do.
So what is the conversation's ultimate goal aside from the Great Commission? What is what do you see for the wider Christian community, like globally and not just locally? What kind of impact do you want for the future? Like I hear you say that sometimes in morning prayer, is that you want us to make a significant impact on the Salt Lake City community. Yeah. So what does that look like in the future? Like 5-10 years, success or fail, what do you want to be remembered as?
Yeah, I think the thing, you said this already, but I say this in prayer all the time. I want Salt Lake Valley to never look the same as a result of us existing as an organization. And, there's a lot of ways you could go about that. There are devious means that you could deploy. But I just mean, where I believe Jesus Christ.
No publicity is, bad publicity.
Well, maybe. But
if we're headlined.
But I think that, if as I believe Jesus Christ is the answer to every question that we have, I really think that. It's kind of a corny thing to say. People kind of mock that, but I really believe that. And so, if Jesus Christ is the answer, then we should be trying to grow numerically.
Right.
So launching new campuses if as we need to, and figuring out how to scale up so that we can be more effective. And then ultimately, I'd love to see the Valley of Salt Lake become this renowned place where Christ is lifted up and glorified, and the gospel message is just everywhere, and you see life change left and right. And so ultimately, I'm not going to be doing this forever. I hope we create a sustaining organization that continues to do this and follows God, and as they think we need to go in new directions and follow and trust Him, I hope that's what happens. Again, we're 8 months old. We're still learning so much every week. It's great stuff, hard stuff, but I hope 10 years from now we're wildly different than we are right now.
Now, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I got to tell you, I'm really enjoying the journey. We're having common, pitfalls, but we've had wild successes. Yeah. We've had memorable moments. The things that we've shared with each other have, in my mind, created something that has already become a memorable experience. Yeah. I just see this going in great directions. I think I'm going to go back on what I said earlier. I do think we've got it right.
Well, I would say this to anyone that's, if anyone's watching this or listening to this, and any of this has piqued any curiosity at all, come check it out. But don't just come one time. And this is one thing I would say. Because we're so big into creating connected community, because we're conversational, you will have one very challenging time to show up invisible here. And that's on purpose. And many churches provide opportunities for people to come and explore anonymously. That's just not what we're doing. And we want you to know, if you come a few times, the stress around not being anonymous it dips each time. And so if anything you've heard today is something that seems interesting, come give us a month of your life, 4 Sundays in a row, and dive into the community, meet some people, and see if this is something that's going to help you in your journey towards Jesus.
Yeah. So even if you don't think that you can make it out, we have, media resources that you can check out. We're on all the standard platforms, but you can visit and see some snippets of Mike talking about some topics. We also have audio available, so you can hear the entire message if you'd like, so that you could hear and kind of see what it looks like before you take the leap of faith and come out and visit us. But we really would like you to check us out.
Plus, if you come, the first time you come, you get a free coffee cup.
I mean, that's who does that?
That's worth it right there.
I just want to say that on that note, we as a community need to realize that above and beyond all else, our job as Christians is to love everybody as God intended. In Matthew, it says, they asked Jesus, said, "What is the greatest commandment of all these things?" And he said, "Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all heart, mind, and soul. This is the first greatest commandment. And the second is like unto it, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these 2 commandments hang all the law and the prophets." What he's telling me is that I have to love everyone. Everyone. It doesn't matter your color. It doesn't matter your sexuality. It doesn't matter your religion. And we want you to come and experience that at the conversation. So, Mike, thank you so much for introducing yourself to us and telling us a little bit about Salt Lake City Church. This thing is amazing. The Conversation SLC. And stay tuned for next episode when we tackle another.
And check it out online. And thank you. I'm looking forward to the next conversations we have right here.
It's going to be nuts.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.